Hey y'all, my name is Angela. Very glad to have you here today. So, I have a bit of a massive book haul, just a bit of a massive one, and my New Year compulsions just got ahead of me. So, let's jump into some of the new books that I got from my bookshelf. Let me start off with some of the thrillers and horrors that I got. So, right off the bat, a few months ago, I got The Troop by Nick Cutter. I mentioned that I was reading this in a few vlogs ago, but this is about a troop and their scoutmaster set on an island in Canada. A man with a stomach parasite suddenly arrives on the shore of this island and starts infecting things. It's gross body horror, and these scouts have to kind of survive, I'm assuming. I am this much through. Definitely enjoying it so far. It's got a lot of that kind of gritty body horror, gross imagery, all those good stuff. So excited to finish this one. Next, I got some new releases. So first is The Golden Couple by Greer Hendricks and Sarah Pekkanen. They, of course, the duo of many other great books that I'll probably put here. But this book follows a couple that's had a bit of a cheating issue that's definitely affected their relationship. So they go see a therapist who has some very unorthodox methods. I enjoy the writing style and I love a good therapist book. Next book I got really recently on a trip to San Francisco, and it's Near the Bone by Christina Henry. This book follows two people, Maddie and William, who live very isolated lives in the middle of the woods. And one day, Maddie goes out and finds a mutilated fox and realizes that they really aren't alone in the woods, and there's something nefarious going out there. I've heard a lot about this book. I was debating between getting this and The Library at Mount Char, both books that I've been really interested in, but definitely very different vibes. I got this book from Books Inc., so shout out to Books Inc. Love this book. Love that I found it unexpectedly. For my last thriller slash horror, I got The Paris Apartment by Lucy Foley. This book is about a girl who goes to stay with her half-brother in his apartment in Paris, but when she shows up, he's missing. And he's got some very interesting neighbors who might have something to do with him being missing. So very typical of Lucy Foley's, we have kind of a cast of suspicious characters, a person who's slowly piecing things together. And I recently read The Guest List by her and I absolutely loved it. So I'm reading this in the month of March for a semi-secret TBR video. I'm excited to get this one. Moving on from the thrillers and horrors, I have a bit of a special category, and I'm really excited to have gotten all these books. Yep, y'all know what time it is. I got 3 books from Hanya Yanagihara, and I think these are all 3 of the books that she's published. The first one being The People in the Trees, and this is about, I think, it's a doctor who goes to this island and studies the people there, and from what I've read of it so far, the doctor's kind of a scummy person or like a very controversial figure. And then the infamous A Little Life, which I did read about 2 years ago. This follows 4 friends who are in New York. It follows their entire lives. This is a very heavy book. Please check any triggers warning list before you go into it. And then we have her newest release, which is To Paradise, and this is 3 separate stories following characters with the same name, and it's all kind of past, present, future, a little bit of like a fantastical but also contemporary and also futuristic. I think this is being touted as a very ambitious work. I'm excited to get to it. Let's move on to the romance books that I got. So the first one I got was One to Watch by Kate Stayman London, and this follows a woman who is a plus-size fashion blogger, and she kind of calls out this reality dating TV show on their lack of diversity, especially when it comes to body diversity. And then she gets a call from the show asking her to be their next bachelorette, and so this follows her journey going through this dating show. This seemed like a really fun contemporary that I think got voted for the romance category in the Goodreads Awards maybe last year. I've heard a lot of good things about it. And the next few romance books are all part of one series. This is... Okay, take 2. This is the Burn For Me and Sapphire Fire series by Alona Andrews, the wife and husband duo. I have read and recommended the original series before, which is the Burn For Me trilogy. You have Burn For Me, White Hot, and Wildfire. This is set in a world where certain people have magical abilities, and over time, houses have developed that basically contain these families that all have like specialties of magical abilities. And it follows the main character, who is a private investigator who initially does kind of very low-end jobs, like just finding out cheating scandals, tracking people down, kind of stuff like that. But then she gets hired to bring in this very dangerous suspect, and it takes collaboration with this very powerful guy. Because they're after the same suspect, they begin working together and a little romance develops. My favorite thing about the series is that there's a really good balance of this fantasy plot versus the actual romance. And this is one of the best urban fantasies that I've read, and is the one that I will always recommend to people. And a continuation of this world that I have not read yet is Sapphire Flames and Emerald Blaze. So this is, I guess the whole series is called the Hidden Legacy series, and this part of the series follows the main character from the last book's sister, and obviously the romance there, she has her own kind of struggles or like plot or something that happens here. As you can tell, I didn't look very much into this. I knew I liked the world and the characters and the writing styles, and I am excited to kind of complete this series as a whole, maybe read them all at once. I remember I finished the first 3 books literally in a week. It was that addicting. Now on to the final category of the haul, which is the fantasy books. The first book I found thrifting was The Lies of Locke Lamora by Scott Lynch, and this follows a man who becomes this leader of this kind of gang of bandits, and he becomes very infamous. But then obviously there's a coup, there's some dark forces at play, and this person gets involved in this big plot, as I feel like is the case with most kind of adventure fantasies. I think this is pretty much a staple in the fantasy genre. I always see it pop up on like the must-read fantasy lists, and it's a surprisingly thick book. Like there's 700 pages in this tiny little mass market paperback. The other book I got, I'm so excited, and this excitement only came very recently, and it's The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue by V.E. Schwab. And this book follows a girl who makes a deal with this demon/devil character to give her more time before she's forced into this marriage that she didn't want. But instead, this devil demon guy makes it so that she can basically never leave a mark in the world, meaning that things that she keeps always ends up disappearing. People never remember her name. They don't remember ever seeing her, and she also can't say her name to other people. So she's kind of like this ghost. This book has definitely made its way around every corner of the book world, and everyone has raved about it, but I never really got into the hype until I checked out the audiobook and listened to maybe the first like 20-ish%. And by that point, I was bait grab, launched myself on the hook, and pulled into V. Schwab's ship of stories. I was absolutely in love with the whole premise and the writing style. I just knew I wanted to keep a copy of it. I had a feeling that it was one of those books that I would want to revisit. So I went ahead and got it for a very nice price through Book of the Month. And my last book of the book haul is my March pick for Book of the Month, which is The Cartographers by Peng Shepherd. This book follows a woman named Nell who studied cartography under her father, who is a famous cartographer, but they got into a big argument, and she hasn't seen him since. But then he one day ends up mysteriously dead in his office with this very old map that seems to have something to do with the reason behind why he died. So she decides to investigate into his death, into the map, and into what's going on in behind the scenes. Initially reading the synopsis, I thought this was a contemporary book, but I think it is fantasy. It's got bits of that magical kind of fantastical element to it, especially with this mysterious map that is the center figure of this book, and I am absolutely in love with this cover. It is so beautiful. And that was my absolutely massive book haul. If you read any of these books and want to let me know what you thought of them, please let me know in the comments. If you want to find me on other places on the internet and be friends there, I have my Goodreads, Instagram, as well as Storygraph linked in my description. And I also have a sheet linked with different trigger warnings for all the books that I mentioned on my channel, just so that if something sounds interesting to you, you can have the chance to check out any of the trigger warnings before going into them. Thank you for watching, and I will see you all next time.